soon to save the day.
Welcome to Mighty House. This is a radio show for people with problems, home improvement problems, that is, and for people who want common sense guidance on how to build green and live a more sustainable lifestyle. Send an email or call into the show. The Mighty House crew is on the job. This is Mighty House.
All right, you can join us on Facebook Live, YouTube Live, and Periscope Live right now. Brought to you in part by Mr. Floor. And wherever you're watching, click on the like button and subscribe so you'll be notified when we hit the air. Podcasts of previous shows available at mightyhouse.net, Stitcher, iTunes, TuneIn, SoundCloud, and on homeimprovementusa.com. Find links to all of them at mightyhouse.net. And if you want to leave some questions underneath, we'll try and answer them while the show's going on here live and answer them as we're going along. And also, Rich, if somebody wanted to sign up for the newsletter, how could they do that?
Well, you want to go over to mightyhouse.net, click on the Contact Us page. Just need your first and last name, your email address, scroll on down and click on Boom Done.
Boom Done, just like that. And our special guest today is Dr. Allison Bailes, and he's from Energy Vanguard. Is that how you say that?
That's it.
That's it?
Energy
Okay.
Vanguard.
So a couple, 3, 4, 5 weeks ago, whatever it was, we did the H of HVAC. And we wanted to get Allison back on to actually talk about the V part of HVAC. And Allison's got a nice list, a blog page. So if you really want to learn way more than what you ever should know about HVAC and energy, home improvements, stuff like that for your house, you can check out his website. It's energyvanguard.com. And go on over there and check it out. He's got a great blog page. You'll learn a lot of great information there. Some of it's over my head, so you got to take that for what it's worth. But that's just the way it goes. It's all good information.
Especially if you read the comments after a post. Then they really get in the weeds. Then it's really bad.
That's where the geeks come out. It's a lot of fun. So what we're going to do is we've got 12 or 17 steps to better ductwork system. So right out of the box, Allison, let's give you the first one. What is it there, Fuzzy? You got it?
Yes, with Allison Bailes.
Oh,
yes.
There it is.
Air on people.
Right. Don't blow air on people. So do you want me to go through and say a little bit about all these as we put them out there? Okay. All right.
Just
so
go ahead and give us a quick overview and let us know what that is, because at least for in my master bath, I thought I'd be really good. I'd put the vent in the ceiling. It was right over the window. And when the air turns on, it blows cold air as I'm standing at my vanity right at my back. And of course, when I'm doing business, sitting down, it blows on me over there too. So it's kind of cold when it first comes on until the heat comes around. Or if the AC's blowing, things get tiny. So we got to be careful about that.
Yeah, blowing air on people is not good. Drafts are uncomfortable in the wintertime, and even in summertime. If you've just come in from outside and you're all hot and sweaty, then it will feel good. But if you've been in the house for a while, your metabolism is down to house level, then that cold air blowing on you is not going to feel so good. What you want is to blow the air out of the vents and have it mix with the room air so that the whole room gets comfortable.
Right.
Yep.
And so I think we get into it later, is actually location of those, right? So where those vents are too, that's further down the road. So does it matter whether it's blowing down or blowing up? Does it?
It depends on the configuration in the room.
Okay.
Yeah. We were always just as a rule of thumb with no mathematical skills, we always kind of said 3 tumbles so that everything was sort of away from each other. So that would have allowed time to mix, so you didn't short circuit supply and return, and or just blow it down on somebody.
Right. Yep.
Okay. So blowing air on people is not good.
Not good. No.
Not good. Okay. Slow down the air with bigger ducts.
Yeah.
Right.
So if you read the guidelines, so the protocol for duct design is called Manual D from the Air Conditioning Contractors of America, and they in there they have tables for designing the velocities for supply air and return air. And supply air, they'd say up to 900 feet per minute. Well, 900 feet per minute is pretty fast. And it turns out that when you move the air through the ducts faster, there's more resistance. There's more resistance to a fluid moving fast than to one moving slowly. So you increase the static pressure, is the technical term for the overall resistance in the ductwork, and you can end up getting less airflow because of that. So if you move it slower, there's less resistance, you get better airflow, and you can't always do that though. So
okay, so what about the space pack systems that are they have really small duct, tubes, and it just like comes shooting out of there?
High velocity.
What's the, high velocity. Yeah. What's that called, Rich?
High velocity, small diameter ducts.
Right.
Those. They have their place in retrofits, especially where you just can't get ducts through. Or a friend of mine who's a builder here in Atlanta built a house that he took over after it was already designed, and they just had no place to run ducts with anything other than that type of system, the high velocity, small diameter ducts. And but when you do that, you have extra resistance, and you're going to pay for that with the blower energy.
So the fan has to work harder.
Fan has to work harder, yeah.
Okay, Rich, number 3. What's the third one? Can you read it?
Yes. Use return filter grills.
Huh?
In other words, don't put your filters in the air handlers. Put them in.
That's where they go. They go in the furnace to keep the rocks out.
It depends on what kind of filtration you want to do. If you're just trying to protect the coil from big stuff, just use the little 1-inch fiberglass filter and you put it at the air handler. But if you want to do really good air filtration for good indoor air quality, and also if you want to keep your return ducts clean, put the filter at the grill, and that way the stuff gets filtered out before it ever enters the duct system.
Well, that slowdown makes, how some of them, you'll see sometimes it'll just be like one central return, and it blows through the whole unit or the whole house. And when you stand there, you can't even talk because there's so much air and wind noise going into that return. If you put a filter there, will that quiet that down?
Well, probably not in that case. So the noise issue comes from different things. The part of the noise issue could be that the air handler is very close to that return filter grill. I used to live in a condo which had that problem. Whenever the furnace or air conditioner would come on when we were in the living room watching TV, we'd have to turn the TV up because it was so damn loud. Mm-hmm. And that's a real problem. So in that case, the air handler was right behind the filter grill, and so the blower noise came straight through. So if you can put a turn in, that helps. And you have to be careful with turns because that adds resistance too.
Right.
Okay. If you have no other option, there are companies that make duct silencers that you can put in there, which also add resistance.
Duct silencer. Explain how that works.
It's the opposite of a duck call.
Well, duct silence, it's basically baffles, so the air goes through, and so it stops the transmission of noise from the blower through the duct system.
Okay. All right, so we'll have to look that up and post that.
Yeah.
Right.
Go ahead and give us number 4.
I like the grill, the returns or the filters in the grills. They're much more easier for me to maintain, and I do not have to go up in the attic for my air handler.
Yeah, that's another advantage of them is they're more accessible most of the time.
Well, and you guys don't have basements, so.
No, and I still cannot. I kept trying to get them to design houses with mechanical rooms and putting vertical units in there instead of putting units in the attics, but it's like pulling teeth.
Yeah.
Well, they just don't see the need.
Is that the way the architects want to do it down there? Is that it?
It goes back to Grandpa. It's how we've always done it. But we do unvented roof structures now, so it's a lot better than like my house where the attic's 120 degrees and I'm trying to get cold air out of it. Just something about that doesn't make sense, right?
Right. So it's an unconditioned space, which I think that'll be. We're going to follow up with that here in a minute too.
Yeah.
Okay.
Number 4. Size all filters the same.
Yeah.
Now,
so whether you're using return filter, well, go ahead, Rich. You were going to say something.
No, I was just going to say, is that an efficiency thing or a convenience thing?
It's a convenience thing because if somebody's got, say, three, whether they're filter cabinets near the air handler or filter grills, well, if they've got three of them and they're all three different sizes, they've got to have three different size filters when they change them out, and that's difficult. I mean, if you have them all the same size, like in my house, we just put in new ducted mini splits in our spray foam attic, and we have three returns. All of them are 16 by 25 by 2. So I just got a box of MERV 13 16 by 22 filters. I've got a dozen of them in that box. So that's 4 changes of filters, all the same size.
Yeah, we're real good, although it got hard to buy filters lately for whatever reason. But mine, I have one that's 14 by 14 in the master, which is awesome. Gets nice, comfy in there. Then I have a 24 by 24 grill filter, which is not 24 by 24. It is 23.5 by 23.5.
Uh-huh.
So it's like, that doesn't help. First time I went to buy them, like, it's not fitting. I have to jam it in there.
Yeah. So somebody on Facebook said, ridiculous if there's multiple returns. Could you imagine a homeowner changing them yearly? Because, nobody
yearly
changes their filter. So if you had multiple.
Oh, we do a monthly or quarterly.
Would that be better for the furnace or the blower system to have multiple filters that are not changed a year, or just have one right next to it that's not changed in a year?
I would say multiple, because if you've got multiple, then you probably have more total filter area, and it's not going to load as quickly. Well,
at some point, if it was clogging up, it's going to suck air through the seams of the ductwork then too, and probably pull air from other areas. I would assume, if they're not sealed, right?
Yeah,
that's further down the list. We took care of the seams.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Number 5. Increase filter.
Increase. There you go.
Yeah. So the filter has a lot of resistance if it's not done properly, and the design protocol for manual D says that the general pressure drop across the filter is 0.1. You should, when you're doing a design, you should allow 0.1 inch of water column for the pressure drop across the filter, and that's if you do it. So if you go for 0.1 inch of water column and you're using a standard 1 inch fiberglass filter, and somebody switches it out with a MERV 13 pleated filter that's still just 1 inch thick, now you've got a lot more resistance. So if it was 1 inch or 0.1 inch of water column with the MERV 1 filter in there, and now you put the MERV 13 in, you probably are going to have 0.2 or 0.3. And a lot of studies have shown that the pressure drop across those kinds of filters goes way up. So the way you get around that, number one, is you make the filter deeper. Instead of 1 inch deep, you make it 2 inches or 4 inches or 6 inches deep. And then you also increase the dimensions of it. So instead of 12 by 16 or something like that, you make it 16 by 25 or 20 by 25 or 30 by 30. But when you get into the really big ones, then people start complaining about, I don't want my whole ceiling to look like a filter grill, look like a return grill. So make it big to keep the pressure drop low, and it does work. In our office, we put a system in that has a 20 by 20 filter, MERV 13, and the pressure drop across it is about 0.06 with a clean filter.
Huh. So the key there, what was that? What was that last part you said? What was that?
Make it bigger?
What was the very last thing you said? A clean filter.
It does. Well, so if you do this right, the pressure drop doesn't increase that much. The filter will start looking really super nasty, and the pressure drop is still okay. Generally, So generally, you want to change the filter when the pressure drop across the filter doubles. By the time it doubles, then it's probably about time to change it. And for a well-designed filter, the pressure drop doubling is going to mean a really nasty looking filter. So usually people, once people see it, if they do, then they'll change it because it just looks so nasty, even though the pressure drop would say, oh, you don't need to change it yet.
It's not that
so
bad.
They wouldn't have a meter to test the air pressure across the filter. So would that be when the filter's halfway sucked into the plenum, or is it like a quarter of an inch? Or
yeah,
no, that's
when you're straightening the wires to pry the thing out of there.
You're chunk, and you open it up, and that's where you're pulling the filter pieces out of the blower.
Yeah,
that's when you change it.
That happens when you turn the filter the other way around. So you know if you turn the filter around, then you can use it twice, right?
Sure,
because it's still clean on the other side.
Right,
it's self-cleaning that way.
I don't.
That's a joke. Please don't do that.
I'm not recommending that at all. I just somebody told me that the other day, that turning the filter around so that you can get twice as much use out of it.
Yeah, it's like your underwear.
Perfect sense. Yeah. Go ahead, Fuzzy. I know you want to say something.
Yeah, it's like your underwear.
There you go. Thanks. Boom, boom.
And number 6.
All right, number 6, Richard.
Provide return air pathways for all bedrooms.
That seems like a no-brainer, though, but you don't see it a lot.
I don't have any in these. The bedroom I'm in and the one across the hall do not have returns. There's a central return out between them. So this room will pressurize and get very uncomfortable.
Well, if you look at that wording, I didn't say put a return in every bedroom. I said make sure that every bedroom has a return air pathway.
Okay.
Correct.
Just a dedicated return duct going to each bedroom is a return air pathway. That's one type of return air pathway. You can also do transfer grills or jumper ducts. Mm-hmm. So you can just make sure that room is connected with the hallway outside the bedroom, so that the air that gets sent in there through the supply duct can find a way back out, the return air pathway. In some cases, if the
I cut grills over the heads of the doors.
Yeah, you can do that. There are good and bad ways to do that. One is just to cut a hole and put the grills on with nothing in between, but they make special transfer grills with baffles in them that help dampen the sound. Yeah.
So that cuts down the noise. What about undercutting the door?
Yeah, undercutting the doors can work if the airflow to the bedrooms is small enough. That if you're less than about 75 CFM, you might be able to do it with door undercuts. But if you're looking at a bedroom with 150 CFM, you're probably going to need more than a door undercut, unless you want to cut it up to the doorknob. Well, maybe not halfway to the doorknob.
That's what
it's like a Dutch door. I only close the top half.
Yeah, it's a Dutch door. Perfect.
Yeah. And now another option for return air pathway is just get rid of the solid door altogether and just put love beads there.
Oh, yeah.
That's a really good return air pathway.
Flashback to the 60s there, brother.
Yeah.
Way to go. All right, number 7. Follow the 2 rules for flex duct.
Yeah. 2 rules for flex duct. So
that's where you tie it in a pretzel, and you've got way too much of it, so you just clump it together and you connect it at both ends. Call it done, right?
That's it. Yeah, that's both rules that you don't want to do.
I got them both in one, right?
So my 2 rules for flex duct are: number 1, use flex duct only for straight runs. Don't try to turn the air with flex duct. And the other rule is pull it tight. So only use it for straight runs, and then the inner liner, not the outer jacket. The outer jacket is going to be tight too, but the inner liner, which is the pressure boundary for the duct, needs to be pulled tight.
Okay.
So run it straight and pull the inner liner tight. 2 rules.
Right.
So we use flex in all of our homes, and they do not use transition pieces other than maybe some mixture boxes. But for the most part, they bend it. But they are doing a very good job of pulling it tight and supporting it. But my question to you is, I hear that the code is going to change, that they're going to only allow duct or flex duct to work in straight runs, that we are going to have to get fittings. Have you heard anything more about that?
I have not heard about that. I know that there's different model codes out there. There's the international codes, the International Residential Code, and which is what I think a lot of the country's on. But then there's also the IAPMO. I can't remember what it stands for. International Association of Plumbing, Mechanical, something. Their codes are used by some municipalities and the state of California. And a few years ago, they added that flex duct could only be used in maximum 5 foot lengths. So if you're on their code, I think you're limited to 5 foot lengths. Yeah.
That'll hurt.
Interesting. So how should you make a turn properly then? Are you buying a hard piped 90 or a 45, whatever it is, so that it goes in round and then it turns through that?
Yep.
Yeah, there's much less resistance in a piece of hard pipe than pulling a duct tight.
Well, so as Rich said, you can do turns in flex duct, but they need to be long and gentle turns. So you shouldn't. I mean, I've got tons of pictures of turns in flex duct that are just horrible because they add a lot of resistance, and you can't quantify it because the interliner's not pulled tight, and you've got this weird turn. Sometimes it's like 140 degree turn. So I've got a picture of one duct going up like this. Let's see. Oh wait.
Yeah, you got it.
I'm looking at the picture.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it's backwards.
You gotta wait.
We are Devo.
You're showing your age, brother.
Yeah. Almost 60, so that's all right.
Yeah.
So the duct was going up like this, and then the other side it comes down like this. So it's going. That's way too sharp a turn. Anyway,
I've had. We've had them run over the top of linear diffusers, do a 180 and go in instead of just going into that side because they wanted to use that space with something else. So they just did the 180. And don't worry about it. It'll be fine. I just give up. Well, and of course, all of their proposals say they will not pressure balance anything because how could they?
Yeah.
Nice.
It's bad.
Excellent. Okay, where are we, Fuzzy? Number 8. This one's yours, Rich.
Choose better fittings.
Yeah.
Kind of reverts back to number 7.
Yeah. So speaking of those rigid elbows and other fittings, if you look at the resistance rating for fittings is something called equivalent length, and it's basically an elbow might have an equivalent length of 20 feet, which means that elbow, which is maybe only 18 inches long total, has a pressure drop or resistance equal to 20 feet of straight duct. Mm-hmm. And when you are picking fittings, if you look at the equivalent length numbers for different types of fittings, you can see that some are way better than others. So you can pick an elbow that has an equivalent length of 10 feet or 35 feet. And then there's a lot of types of fittings used, the coming off the plenums and takeoffs from trunk lines and the Y splitters and things like that. So, and the boots especially are an important one. Right. So take a look at those equivalent length numbers and try to choose one that's better.
And so a lot of times you'll just see a square duct going down through the basement or whatever, and then they just put a takeoff right off the top or off the side. So that air's just supposed to just turn and do a 90 right through there.
Yeah.
And they make better fittings than just doing stuff like that, I would assume.
Yeah. So a takeoff on a trunk line or an extended plenum, for example, like you were talking about, the more gradual the transition, the better. That's the general rule for fittings and reducing resistance. The more gradual the transition, the better. So if you've got your trunk line coming here and you've got a duct coming off of it, if you've got, say, a 6-inch duct running out this way, if when it first comes off the trunk line, if you have it 8 inches and then tapering down to 6 inches, that's going to be a much better fitting.
Got it. Interesting. Never heard or thought about doing that, but that's pretty cool. Okay.
No.
Number
good luck
9.
telling your next guy.
What was that, Rich?
Good luck teaching your next contractor that one.
All right, Fuzzy, give us number 9.
Or not.
Or maybe. Kinda.
Well, he was on
He's
a roll.
trying. He's trying. Come on,
He's
Fuzzy.
tugging it.
How about if I put the air handler in the middle?
There we go. Yeah. So the total resistance that you have in the duct system depends on how long the runs are. The most resistive, the most restrictive run is how you gauge how much total pressure or pressure drop, how much total external static pressure there's going to be in the system. And if you have a house and the air handler's all the way on one end of the house, your longest run is definitely going to be longer than if you have the air handler in the middle. So keep the air handler in the middle if you can, and that makes your overall system perform better.
Okay, so the house I looked at about a month ago where the furnace was put underneath the basement stairs in the one corner, that's not good.
That makes it a lot harder to make it work.
And then she was complaining that the second floor was cold except for directly above the stairway, strangely enough.
Yeah, short run.
And then the kitchen in the back was freezing cold.
Yep.
All the time.
Sure.
Yep.
So they just stuck it somewhere, I guess. So whatever, it must have fit there. I don't know why.
Just how it's done. Trunk right along the I-beam down the middle of the basement. And just tap off of it.
Right?
Yeah, this is not always the fault of the HVAC contractor. The architects are not involved, and sometimes the architect thinks, well, we've got the space under the stairs. Let's use that. Let's put the HVAC there. That's what mechanical calls it.
I agree.
And so, and then by the time the contractor gets called in, the house is already built. They can't do anything except work with what they got or try to. So
right.
On our big ones, we do a lot of plan reviews. So we check all of as the architect's drawing it, and then also structural, then trusses. So I make sure I can get through. It's because it's brutal. That's the hardest one.
Yeah. I mean, the HVAC guy, he's got large pieces of to put into the house, and if he's going last, it's difficult for him to get around and find out. So then you see where they go down and back up, and they're cutting around stuff, and it's just making the whole system less and less efficient the more they have to do that. So I'm sure if you want, let your HVAC guy come in first. You'll end up with a much better system. Plumbers and electricians can go around them a lot easier. So
like Allison says, the house has to have some place designed for that unit, the chases for the trunks, and so on. So, all right, number 10. Use a lot of mastic to seal the ducts.
Yeah, tight ducts. You want the air that you're conditioning to stay in the duct until it hits the place where you want it to come out. You don't want it leaking out along the way, especially if the duct is an unconditioned space. If you're putting ducts in an unconditioned attic or unconditioned basement or crawl space, then you definitely need to have your duct sealed as tight as possible and insulated very well. If your ducts are in conditioned space, it's still important because you want, ideally the system is designed and you know how much air you want to deliver to each room, and to get that there, you've got to have a system that's not leaking along the way. So,
right, excellent. Okay, what do you got there for us? 11. We're gonna make this, I think.
Woohoo!
We're actually gonna do this pretty good. All right.
All right. Keep the ducts in conditioned space.
Yeah. So we were just talking about that. That's what Rich has, right? That's what your house has.
My ducts are not in conditioned space. So when the AC kicks on, the first blast of air is hotter than your furnace. You know what I mean? It's like, it's crazy.
Yeah. So in hot climates, putting the ducts in an unconditioned attic, you pay about a 20% energy penalty for that. Your cooling bills are going to be about 20% higher if your ducts are in an unconditioned attic. And in cold climates, people usually don't do this, although in recent years there's more cold climate houses with ducts in unconditioned attics for some reason. But in cold climates, often you have basements where you put the system. So,
right. Well, and unless they split it, a lot of times you're like on a 2-story, it's odd. So then they put it in the attic, and then they don't seal anything, they don't insulate it, and then they can't figure out why there's mold and stuff in their attic. But
even though the
Rich?
ductwork's in the attic, it does have the R6 wrap on it.
Oh, well, see, that's all the difference in the world.
World of difference with that. Yes.
Excellent. Okay. Number 12. Oh, there you go. It ties right into that, Rich.
There it does. Yeah. Bury the attic ducts deeply in insulation when you can. Can't get in my trusses.
Yeah. So if think about the temperature difference between the air inside the duct and the air outside the duct. In cooling season, you've got, say, 55-degree air inside the duct, 58-degree air maybe. So between 55 and 60-degree air in the duct, and you've got 120-degree air in the attic, maybe 130-degree air in the attic. So you've got a huge temperature difference there, 60, 70 degrees sometimes across that duct. And if you've got R6 on the duct,
you're good.
Yeah, you're gonna pick up a lot of BTUs there. Now, if you're moving the air fast, the temperature of the air might not change that much. That's why, going back to that earlier thing, I said move the air slowly when you can. Slow down the air when you can. If you have your ducts in an unconditioned attic, that's when you want to speed the air up. You want to be towards the higher end, 700, 800, gotcha. 900 feet per minute, because you're still going to pick up just as many BTUs, but each cubic foot of air is going to pick up fewer BTUs, and temperature will change. So
that's a good thought.
Yep.
That's interesting.
How many more you got there, Fuzzy?
Just a few.
We got 2 more, I think.
So no, there's 17 total. But Allison, let me back up just 1 second. So my attic, because of the situation, and I knew we were warming up the ducts before the AC would kick on, I changed the type of roof vents I had at the ridge. They had core vent, that stapled down stuff. And I changed it to open aluminum, the ones that look like little huts, but they're very high and they have a lot of net free area. I dropped the temperature in the attic by 25 degrees.
Wow.
So that alone, because I couldn't insulate, but by getting rid of the excessive heat, venting the roof better was a good option.
Yeah.
So
anything you can do, well, not anything you can do, but if you can keep the attic cooler with passive ventilation, that's a great thing. Radiant barriers can help too, but they generally don't help a whole lot. And I mean, the savings from radiant barriers aren't great. Right. So these two, 12 and 13, go together. I say bury the attics deeply in insulation when you can, which means run the ducts between the joists on the ceiling, and then just bury them in insulation. But number 13, avoid condensation in humid climates. That is because if you try to bury the ducts in a humid climate, you could end up getting condensation on the jacket of the duct, because now you're putting the duct in the insulation. It's air permeable insulation, so it's still got all the air from the attic down in the insulation. So same dew point, same humidity, air, basically. But now with the duct inside the insulation, that outer jacket is cooler than it would be if it were up in the hot air above the insulation. And that humid air that's all throughout the insulation finds that cooler surface, maybe below the dew point, and you can get condensation on there. So a place like Florida, that would be a dangerous thing to do. It is allowed in the IRC now, the International Residential Code, but you have to put more insulation on the ducts. So you've got to put R13 instead of R8. R8 is what's required now if you have ducts in an unconditioned attic. R13 if you're burying them in the insulation.
So would it be worth it to spray them with foam? Or is there like a foam coating that you could put on them that's actually like closed cell foam? You're going to have a higher R value that way? Yeah, so you can do that with closed cell foam. There's the system called buried encapsulated ducts that's been studied, where they run the duct along the sheetrock and the floor of the attic, and then spray closed cell foam over it, so they completely encapsulate the duct, and then you can bury it deeply in the insulation, and it should be fine. Okay. And on R14, so if you got 2 inches on there, that's all you really need to do then, right? And you don't have to get 6 inches on there. No, not with closed cell. Yeah. Okay, excellent. No, okay, still costly. Number 14, though. Rich.
Shorten the ducts by not putting supplies at the perimeters.
But you're supposed to put the registers over the window. that's where the cold or the heat's coming in, right?
That's what everybody says. Yeah.
If we put our register directly over the windows, we get condensation on the glass on the outside.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, because you're cooling the glass too much.
Yep.
Excellent.
So do you find that even with double pane low E windows, Rich?
No. But the problem we want to run into is that we use mostly double pane. Actually, all of it's double pane. But because it's impact glass, that thick piece will tend to hold the cold better from night into. So we just move them away.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So the original reason for doing this is because a lot of your heating and cooling load comes from the windows and doors, because in the old days you had a single pane window there, and that's very little insulating value. So in the wintertime it's going to get very cold there. In the summertime it's going to get hot. And if you blow the air in that area, that helps attack the load right where it is.
So you're conditioning the air as it comes in. That was an early invention for an ERV, I think, right? Because it's almost certainly leaky as well.
Right. So you're putting the vents there to keep those areas more comfortable, because that's where you're going to feel the most uncomfortable otherwise. But now we have much better windows
and wall assemblies.
And wall assemblies, and so the load there isn't nearly as high. The walls are still better than the windows, but we don't need to have the vents right there at the window. So we can keep the ducts shorter by putting them towards the interior, and we can still get air out to the windows if with proper choice of registers and
diffusers.
And sizing properly.
But I said, again, you go to school, but
they're commenting on Facebook for us. So
okay,
it's just this is how we've always done it.
They're all saying hi, good job, all that stuff. Oh, is that Rich?
There you go. It's just the way it's always been done. You'd walk out into a room, there's the window, go cut a hole in the floor, go in the basement, push the boot up. So it's just, again, that's what we're trying to talk about, is that you got to think outside the box, and doing this stuff properly is not that much more difficult.
Yep.
Inside the box, Rich. That's what we've been talking about. Keep it inside the box.
Yeah. The building envelope. Keep your brain out.
Yeah. Okay. Number 15.
Take advantage
of the coronavirus effect.
The Kawanda effect is something that helps you with airflow sometimes. If you've got, say, a high wall register blowing supply air out into the room, and you put it just under the ceiling, and you've got a nice long flat ceiling that you can blow it under, that air moving along the surface will move farther through the room than if it's just blowing out into in the middle of the room. The surface effect, it's also called the surface effect, and that helps the air travel farther. So you can get better mixing, better throw by using that.
So a sidewall vent blowing across a flat ceiling is better than having a diffuser blowing straight down a wall. Get to the room and mix better.
Both can work. It depends on what your objective is and what where you place the vent in the room and things like that. So you just have to look at the room and see what's the best with where I can run my ducts. Sometimes you can't get a duct to where it would be ideal over there by the window.
Right.
All right. So if you were on an interior wall, that same effect works going down the wall versus across the ceiling, or is it a horizontal thing or a vertical thing, or it doesn't matter as long as it's following that wall?
When you start doing it vertically, then you've got another effect that comes in, and that's gravity.
Right.
So it's mainly on the horizontal surfaces, ceilings. Okay. Yeah. Okay. It's mainly where you use that.
Okay. Got it. Okay. 16. Rich, this one's yours.
Never use bypass ducts.
Okay.
What's a bypass?
We need a picture for this one, I think.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever attempted this stunt.
Well, this refers to a zone system. So if you've got one heating and air conditioning system, and it's got 2 thermostats on it, let's say. You've got 2 zones. So let's say one might be the master suite, one might be the rest of the house. And each zone has its own thermostat. There are zone dampers. So when the thermostat in one zone calls for air, the zone damper opens, the system comes on. And if the other system's not calling for air, then that damper stays closed. And what some contractors do, and it's recommended. I mean, the ACA protocols show how to do this. There's a zoning protocol. ACA is Air Conditioning Contractors of America. There's a zoning protocol which actually says that this is okay, and here's how to do it. I am not a fan of it. Several people I know who are smarter than I am and much more experienced than I am also are not fans of it. Because what happens, so you've got 2 zones. Let's say one's calling for air, the other's not. The bypass duct then will takes the excess air, because you're blowing extra air in there now, and it'll take that extra air and run it back to the return. So it comes out of the supply. So one part of the air is going to the zone that's calling, and then the excess air goes back to the return vent or the return plenum. And then it goes through the air conditioner or furnace or heat pump again, and it gets heated or cooled again. And so what happens as you keep cycling through this bypass duct is you lower the efficiency of your system, number one. So that's your best case. You lower the efficiency because the air coming out gets colder and colder, and the air going in gets colder and colder in air conditioning mode. And you're losing the efficiency of your system by doing that. Number 2, it could get so bad that the coil freezes up, and that can damage the compressor. If you've got a furnace, it could crack the heat exchanger because it gets too hot. That I think is pretty rare. I think coils freezing up are more likely, but the most common problem is just lower efficieny.
So a lot of times you'll see that though, that they're installing those bypasses because it's a zone system. There's not enough air flowing across the coil, and the AC coil is actually freezing up. So they think by putting this on there, they're allowing more air to pass through it. But so what you're saying is even at that, you can still get it to freeze up. Yeah, especially if the zones aren't balanced very well. Like, if one zone has a much smaller need than the other and is taking less air, so it's a smaller duct, you're sending more air back. The bypass duct may not be big enough. So, yeah, you could have that too.
Most of our systems are big houses. We do a lot of it. I do a lot of zone dampered systems. We don't do a bypass, but they are balanced per square foot, so to speak, where the demand should be more equal. So that they do that. It's also variable speed equipment. So it might only be running at 15%. So it's not pushing real hard. So it's not moving tons of air. It's just wherever it's calling for it. So I've had good luck with them. Very little service.
Yeah.
It's been good.
Yeah.
So could you also, instead of putting that bypass in, just have one of the other dampers, even though that zone's not calling for it, where that would just open a little bit to relieve some of that pressure? And it would just leak some air into the other zone, even though it's not calling for it at the time.
Yeah, there's you can create what's called a dump zone. So you just have a duct coming off with a barometric damper or some kind of damper that when one zone is calling and another's not, then that damper will open, and so it dumps it into, say, a basement that's not directly conditioned already, or but it's inside the enclosure.
Right.
You don't want to dump it into an unconditioned space.
Right.
No.
Right. But
it's all excess air anyway.
In the basement.
Right. Nice.
Okay. Number 17.
Test
all right,
the system
this
for
one's yours,
static
Allison.
pressure, airflow, duct leakage, and overall performance. See, now every proposal I get from my contractors, that's specifically excluded.
Yep.
It is. I swear to God. They won't do dust, static pressure, or balancing of the system.
So we do not stand behind our work. Is that what it says?
Yeah.
Oh, they stand somewhere around the curb.
Yeah. Which is where they stand when they do the load calculation, right? Manual E for eyeball.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Well, we get the MEPs drawn up by engineers, but it is still comes down to the guy in the field. I don't care what you put on paper. If the guy in the field
Yeah.
doesn't care, it's like Ron and I always said about windows. I can buy you the best windows in the world and junky windows, and I can get the bad windows to perform better just by the way they're installed.
Yep.
So,
yeah.
Yeah, that's a complicated one,
Allison.
doing duct testing.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a bunch of things here. So, number one, static pressure. This is that overall resistance I told you about. You want to measure the total external static pressure. It's just the pressure drop across the box, the air handler or furnace cabinet. And that tells you a lot of good information, but, tells you how resistive your duct system is, including the filter. And then you want to measure the airflow. If you've designed it with airflow called out for each room in the house, you want to measure the airflow and see how close you actually are, and have balancing dampers installed so that you can adjust it if you need to, because it's probably not going to be there on the first pass unless you get really lucky. And then duct leakage, of course, we want tight duct systems so they're not leaking, whether they're in conditioned space or not. And overall,
that's putting that mastic on there, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Taping them shut.
Yep.
They have tape or the mastic. Either one you can put on there.
Yeah, I prefer mastic, or there's also mastic tape, which is it's a much thicker and stickier tape than the regular foil tape that you see.
Okay.
Yep.
So, and then
the duct
that
leakage
helps your
test is
overall
good.
performance.
Yeah, and there's other things to do, like measure the temperature drop across the coil and cooling mode and things like that.
Excellent. Well,
That's where the rest of
how'd
school
we
comes
do
in.
there, Fuzzy?
Good.
Yeah, we're good.
Yeah, just over 45 minutes.
Oh, come on. Wow. Okay. Well, with that, Allison, I really appreciate your time. And I know we ran a little long here, but this is good, solid information.
Yeah.
We're talking about the V in HVAC, and really important stuff that nobody pays attention to. I think Allison would agree. That's the last thing everybody thinks about.
Yeah,
You don't see the duct work, it doesn't matter.
yeah.
But it causes all of the, when you're uncomfortable in your house, it feels drafty, things aren't balanced. I mean, all that stuff is going on because the ventilation, the V part, the ductwork is not installed properly, and it's not balanced properly. So,
Okay. Let me just say one other thing. So
Sure.
There's a lot more to ventilation than just the air moving through the ducts as well. There's the bringing outdoor air in and exhausting air from the house, from the kitchen and the bathrooms, having whole house ventilation. So, and that's another big aspect of it that we didn't really hit on much. I mean, the duct work that we talked about today applies to that because there's always ducts that go with that part of the ventilation. So,
yeah. So
We'll talk
that's
about
another
ventilation. That's a whole nother show, doing bathrooms correctly and kitchen hoods and whatnot, and get makeup air. So you could see what we can do with 17 items. So
Well, Allison, thank you for getting our ducks in a row.
Whack, whack.
You're welcome.
Well, that's why Robbie's not here
All right,
today. She wanted to stay home
with
and eat
that-
quackers.
Yeah. So, hey, next week, I think Robbie's going to be back with Robbie's World, another edition for that. And so you'll want to tune in for that. And again, thanks, Allison. Your information, if somebody
Allison.
wants to check your blog out or give you a call, got a question.
Yeah, energyvanguard.com.
Or if they
What was
want
that,
a
Rich?
really well engineered, or if they want to hire them to do an engineered system.
Oh, yeah.
That's what they
Because
do.
that's kind of your
Duct
gig, isn't it?
design.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we do design HVAC systems. Yes.
And what part of the country are you in?
Well, we are in Atlanta, but we design systems all over the country.
Oh, so do you get to travel and go see how they're installed and check them out or not?
Occasionally, usually we're just doing the system design remotely, and then it gets installed. And
And you're praying it's done correctly.
yeah, we've been following up, and a lot of them are done. Every once in a while, we hear from somebody who says, "Oh yeah, the contractor just threw that away." I say, oh, I hate that.
So yeah, in our locale, we have to turn in, if we turn on our bigger homes, we have to turn in our MEPs, and then the inspectors are extremely diligent about checking the install. If it calls for 10-inch, it better have 10-inch. You know what I mean? So just go.
Oh, good.
So, all right. Well, that's excellent. All right. Again, the podcasts are available at mightyhouse.net, and you can also go to Stitcher, iTunes, TuneIn, SoundCloud. On Home Improvement USA, you can find links to all of them, again, at mightyhouse.net. We also will post this right on the homepage. So if you missed a part of it, you want to go back and listen to it again, just go to mightyhouse.net. You scroll down a little bit, it'll be right on the homepage there, and you can listen to it again. So, again, Allison, I appreciate your time, buddy. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Allison.
Oh, well, thanks for having me. It's been great.
All right. And for Fuzzy Robbie, are you there, buddy?
Yeah.
All right. Rich Calgill, Robbie, who took the night off, and Rich Calgill. Hey, who's that in the background,
Ron.
Rich?
That's Ron right there.
I'm in your garage. Look at that.
That's
All
right.
right, cool. All right. Keep it square and level.
Till next time.
Until next time. All right.
Yeah.
Take us out there, Fuzzy.